I like
It's
that.
an important one.
Yeah. No.
It doesn't matter who's running. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter what party affiliation is.
Yep.
Your very basic civic responsibility is to make sure you vote. And I want to make sure that if I went through the trouble to vote, I want my vote counted.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, I agree. I mean, we have to be more careful than ever about what we're doing because I think this is going to set the precedent.
yeah.
And I think that we need to do that. So
Hi,
Heather said,
Lisa.
thanks for sharing.
And hi,
That's great. I'm
Sal.
glad. I'm glad I know because I'm gonna make sure that we do it tonight and we get it in the mail because just to keep an eye on it because I have my kids, this is still their home address. So
And they're
all
drop
right.
boxes, right?
Yeah. So I want to welcome everybody. Powering the Pandemic Pivot. It's our Wednesday virtual lunch with the Entrepreneurs Advisory Team. You can't get better than this. Come on. This Wednesday on our webinar for entrepreneurs, we're talking about building and keeping a team and how small business can make it a competitive edge even remotely. And this is like so dear to my heart. I literally am doing a webinar on this tomorrow with New Jersey Business and Industry Association about creating a remote culture and getting that connection between those employees and yourself. So I'm like so giddy about this. And I'm just going to say I have to leave a few minutes early. I have a webinar right after this if anybody wants to join about outsourcing your IT or your accounting. And Derek Han from Velocity, he's going to be talking about outsourcing IT, and I'm going to be talking about outsourcing accounting. And it's incredible how similar they are and what criteria is involved.
He's so popular.
And so I'm just a busy girl. So I just wanted to welcome Jason Meyer, who is the principal lawyer at Meyer Business Law, the firm he founded in 2009 and dedicated to the legal needs of entrepreneurs and the business they run. He's dedicated to us. He's going to help us. You just call him. And then we have Aisha Hamilton, the illustrious, the famous, the very intelligent, the owner at Hamilton Law Firm, and she focuses her practice on employment law. So if you're an employee, you need Aisha in your corner, especially in this day and age. All information and content on this webinar is for general informational purposes only. It's not professional advice, and we are not creating a professional relationship. Can you tell I'm on with two lawyers? And to do that, you need to call us. And please put any questions in the chat window. We will, get to them as we go through. We're going to talk about what's going on. And Aisha, even though she gave like a really good tip at the beginning there about voting, she's got more. So tell us what's new and how are you doing? First, we'll start with how are you doing?
I'm doing great because I did vote. Now I feel like it is off my desk, it's in the county box, and I don't have to worry about it. I spent like 3 weeks worrying about, because we've moved out of our house and have not closed on our new house, where my ballot was going to go. So that was a little bit stressful. But once I received my ballots, it's all good. So I'm going to talk to you about 3 quick things.
Okay.
As business owners, even as employees, you need to be really cautious about bringing political speech into the workplace. Unless you work in a public setting, which means you work for a government entity or some form of public entity, you really need to be cautious about, listen, leave your Biden hat and your MAGA hat at home. Don't bring it into the workplace. It's not appropriate. Our old social cues about not talking about sex, politics, and religion still apply. Just leave those at home. The other quick highlight I want to throw in there is California is always on the leading edge of employment law issues, and they're very, very protective of employees. So when California does something, I pay attention because I wonder about whether it will come to New Jersey. New Jersey has appeared to follow California's trend, and the new trend now in California, occasioned by all of these layoffs, is they're trying to enact legislation which creates a right of recall for all employees who were laid off due to some financial economic reason, who then have to be tapped first when the company starts to rehire its workforce. Now,
That's like calling the bluff when you say, "Oh, we're eliminating your position."
That's
It's not
exactly
you.
right.
We're eliminating your position, and we're not going to
Exactly
have an
right.
assistant chief. We're going to have a chief assistant.
Exactly right.
Right.
Okay, so a lot of the cases I deal with are position elimination claims, right? But even I, being on the employee's side of things, have to worry about the distinction that this is drawing. Ordinarily, the right of recall type of scenario applies in a collective bargaining situation where you have unionized employees. And then there's a very clear set out for who has to be, who's on that recall list. That does not apply in the context of private employers. But if California gets what they want and they pass this statute, and New Jersey may follow suit because we have done so on unionized type of issues in the past, you might have a private employer being forced to comply with the right of recall statute. So that's something to keep your eye on. It's brand new now in California. It has not passed yet, but you wanna track that, because as an employer, you're going to have to really change the way you do things, especially if you're trying to discriminate against your employees.
If you're trying to actively do something wrong.
That's right. Because tell me, I'm going to be watching for this statute. The other thing you have to see now, and you will see a growing number of these, is lawsuits claiming that a company did not provide sufficient PPE, or that a company was not setting the right tone or complying with OSHA standards during the pandemic. An employee complained about it, and then they got fired for that complaint. I've gotten numerous of these calls, and there was a recent lawsuit just filed against Amazon alleging exactly that the manager wasn't enforcing key COVID safety procedures in the workplace, that when he complained about it, he was mocked for complaining about it. His concerns were dismissed. And that's something you really have to be cautious of. So Alisa, you're up next on what should be watching for.
Can I just ask you a quick question, Yisha, on that? So we've talked before about how often employers get hit on the retaliation claim, even if the primary claim, is more questionable. It's sort of easier to nail you on retaliation, that is, acting against somebody just because they brought up an issue. Do you read New Jersey's Conscientious Employee Protection Act to extend to things like complaining about health and safety in the workplace?
Absolutely, absolutely, because SEPA requires an allegation that it's a violation of law or public policy or company policy, actively misrepresenting to a customer, actively misrepresenting, company's behavior that sort of goes afoul of what we expect normal companies to behave. And then you are now not even required to have made that complaint outside of the company. You could have made it to a supervisor. You could have made it to someone with authority in the company, who then turns around and says, knock it off. You're making complaints that are going to force us to spend more money. We're not going to do this. And by the way, you're out. So,
right, so employers be on notice. There is a law.
Be careful.
Sorry, Alyssa.
Yeah. Good things to keep in mind. I mean, so I'm going to talk about the SBA, because the SBA got tired of Congress and waiting for them to make a move, and they took the bull by the horns. So SBA put out a rule for the PPP, which I'm thrilled with, because this was an issue. So if you got a PPP loan for under $50,000, they created this really short form for you to fill out, and it doesn't include the full-time equivalent. There was a calculation you're going to have to do to figure out what the full-time equivalent was, and that was what made it really complex. And you only have to provide payroll documentation. If your payroll for that period it covers the loan, that's all you have to provide. So it's really, really nice. The thing is, you still have to check with your bank, because even though the SBA came out and said, look, here's the form, fill it out, that's what we'll accept, the banks are the ones that have to accept it. So you have to check with your bank and ask them if they're accepting it yet. Some banks are creating their own portals. One of the banks is sending out a survey to find out what you're willing to do. Very interesting. Everybody's doing different things. Check with your bank. But please know, and this was a stressor point for a lot of people, you have 10 months after the completion of using the money. So it's 10 months after 8 weeks or 24 weeks. And if the money was dispersed before June 5th, then you can actually choose it to be 8 weeks or 24 weeks. Anything after June 5th is automatically 24 weeks. So we're talking, it is months from now, but you still need to apply as soon as your bank has it available. I would apply sooner rather than later, as soon as it's available, especially if you're under 50,000. On another note, there's still $134 billion that's ready, that funds that were put aside for small businesses. So I know you'll be surprised, but Congress and the administration can't get their act together to figure out how to dole this out or what they're going to do with it. I know I'm being kind of critical, but I also, and then another side, I think this might be actually wise. We don't know what's coming. We don't know. Do we have COVID under control? Not really. Could something else rear its ugly head? Maybe. Who knows? I think it's actually good that they haven't made a decision about it. I think we need to wait and see what happens. And I have to, even though I don't normally agree with almost any politicians and their bickering and nonsense, at this point, I'm kind of glad they're bickering and keeping it, or maybe it's the plan. I don't know, but I think that's a good thing that they're going to hold off until making a decision about it. Jason, tell us about the CARES funding.
So New Jersey is plowing right ahead and doing what it can to take care of businesses that need help through this period. And I hear you about waiting, but that doesn't do any good for small businesses that need the funds to keep the doors open while we're sitting here. So New Jersey has opened up phase 3 of its grant program through the NJEDA. As I've said before, New Jersey does not have the ability to print money, so what it has to give is more limited than what the federal government can do. But they have announced this phase 3, and I would really recommend that people look into it. It's very much designed for small businesses and even for entrepreneurially operated solopreneurs, very small businesses, what they call micro businesses. Here's what you need to know about it. It's $70 million total program. I mean, that's not a huge program, but for what they call micro businesses, that is a business with 5 or fewer full-time equivalent employees, including solos. So solo consultant, solo service provider, as many entrepreneurs are, or business with independent contractors and not a lot of employees. Micro businesses this time around are entitled to $5,000 grants, even if you got $1,000 from phase 2 or phase 1 of the program. But you have to register for the program by the end of the day on Tuesday coming up. And then there are specific deadlines for when to file your application. And they've said the applications are first come, first serve. For micro businesses, the deadline is, the application window opens up Friday, October 30th at 9 a.m. They've already had enough interest where it's given them some website problems. There'll be a lot of businesses applying. If you're interested in this, be timely about it. It is definitely a grant for businesses that can certify that the COVID-19 pandemic has negatively affected their businesses. Funds are only supposed to be sent on basically replacing what you didn't make and not on like capital improvements. I put a link in the chat for the main page from NJEDA on how to get more information on the program. And obviously, you can call any of us if you have a question about it.
And I love it that they include nonprofits. Nonprofits are being so devastated right now. because they normally do fundraising, and they do Shine and Inspire is a local one, and they help kids who and kids who were already in, in volatile situations before this happened, are in worse states now. And so it's, something like Shine and Inspire, they're actually having an event on Sunday, but I think this is great for those nonprofits that haven't been able to do fundraising. Thanks for bringing that, Jason.
Absolutely. So, hey, let's talk about our theme.
Okay. So can I go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
So like I said before, like, I love all this. So Aisha, you represent employees, and you see the results in areas of team building and team leadership too. I mean, isn't that the road to hell is paved with intentions, is paved with good intentions. So what's the biggest thing small businesses usually get wrong about building their team or building their leadership?
I think the one thing that usually comes out of when we're at the litigation stage, whether you're in small business or big business, is you're not communicating well enough. The leadership is not communicating what their objectives are. You're not communicating what you have a zero tolerance policy for. So it's important to have the handbook, but that's not where the conversation ends. You have to do training. Small businesses often don't spend any time or resources on things like team building. They're like, oh, we're all in the office together, we're a team. Don't assume that you're a team, right?
Yeah.
Don't assume that there isn't discontent and that there isn't discord amongst your team members. I've talked with attorneys who say, they have 6 staff members, paralegals or secretaries or, receptionists, and one of them is really combative. One of them might be, sort of gossiping. You need to be paying attention to that stuff. And I will tell you, most often small businesses don't have in-house HR. They have an office manager, or not even an office manager. They just have, they're just doing it.
HR all the time.
Right. And you can't do that. So there's a distinction between what HR does in the context of making sure everybody fills out their, W-4s and that the W-2s are issued on time and that kind of stuff, making sure the forms are in place. But then there's also the team building part of that I don't think owners should hand off to HR. Owners need to be doing that stuff themselves, especially in the context of a small business.
Yeah, when it's that small, I would think that, we have a handbook. So of course, everything Aisha says, I go, oh my God, am I doing all this? So we have a handbook. We actually review it. We review it every 6 months, but we actually update it when things come up. And we did just have something come up, like you're saying, what do you have zero tolerance for? We had someone on our team start to record a meeting, but didn't say anything. And, I think we just thought this is an unspoken rule, but you can't have unspoken rules in business. So,
and actually in New Jersey, you can do that. It's a single party recording state, which means as long as the person doing the recording knows they're recording, one of the people to the conversation knows that it's being recorded, you can do it.
That sounds stupid to me. Sorry, but it does.
Not from my perspective, and I get to use all of that in evidence.
So we made it a policy. Well, okay, that's a good question. Does it go against the policy? Like, we have a policy now that you have to tell the person that you're recording, and you have to tell them why you're recording it.
As long as you had that policy in place before the recording was made, then you have an argument. However, the law still provides that it's a one-party recording state. And I don't think that a company policy in itself could change the law, but maybe. I think you'd have an argument.
Going to the Supreme Court. Okay. Jason, what do you weigh in on this?
It's an interesting question because, you can discipline people for things which are not expressly against the law. because you have to lay the groundwork for that being your policy. And if it's repeated violations of policy, it'd be an interesting argument between whoever that was and Aisha. So I completely agree. I mean, entrepreneurs, small businesses, you have to be upfront. You have to communicate about these things. Team stuff doesn't happen automatically. I will say, the handbook is necessary, but in companies where it makes sense to have a handbook, it's still just the minimum. It's still setting a floor. Like privacy policies and many other things, once you have a handbook, you better make sure you're following it. So make sure what's in a handbook is all stuff you're doing and prepared to do. But for a lot of businesses, it's not realistic. I think businesses, maybe I don't know how many businesses there are, but let's say fewer than 10 employees who really spend a ton of time on an employee handbook, because we were all sitting around the room, and we're just not getting to that. But handbook or not, the other things I would bring into the picture here are at this point, are other critical documents. So when you hire someone as an employee, you should have an offer letter. Whether you want to have a formal employment agreement that says employment agreement and purports to be an employment agreement is a more subtle and complex question. But generally, you ought to have at least an offer letter that lays out some of the critical terms. And if you don't want to have an employment contract and you want to have an at-will employee, it ought to say that you're an at-will employee and set those expectations. And I think setting the expectations with employees at that point is the first of what will then be ongoing steps to set the right relationship between you and your teammates. This goes double for independent contractors, for people who are not technically on payroll, W-2, withholding, all that stuff. If you have an independent contractor, even if it's just you and that contractor, from my point of view, you better have a document. You better have an independent contractor agreement for a whole host of reasons, not the least of which is you want to help yourself define that person as an independent contractor, but also, to take care of these expectations and requirements and who's doing what. And not only do you need them, you really need to do them right. This is not a place for amateur hour. This is not a place for, I found something on the internet and downloaded it. Get some help with this document, because you need it. And if you do it right, it's a huge aid to you. But B, do it wrong and it will come back to bite you big time. So it's high stakes, and worth the effort to do right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're talking about protecting your business.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about, and not only that, you're talking about protecting your employees too. It protects both of you.
And it's protecting your time and attention. Right.
Time suck.
It's a huge time suck when you get out. And it's a big morale suck, and it takes your energy away. And that's not what it's there for. If it's family, you want the family to be happy together.
Yeah. Well.
So let me flip this around, Alisa. Part of the reason that First Steps Financial, frankly, gets the attention it should in all these podcasts and webinars and everything else is you have a cool structure business, right? You are providing outsourced services, but you yourself you're a virtual company. People are scattered all over the country doing work for First Steps Financial, and I have to say, admittedly, as a happy client, the people I know are having a jolly old time working for Alisa. So even before pandemic, you were running a fairly decent sized remote workforce, and they're humming along. So how do you do that? What do you think are one or two things that got you that success that you can pass along?
Well, I can tell you that, even though we were already doing remote, COVID made changes for us too. It really, really did. We were humming along and everything was great. And then it showed flaws in the system for us. Mm-hmm. And one of them was that we didn't communicate enough. And that was interesting to me, because we talk all the time. We're emailing, we have meetings, like we're always talking. But as a group to come together, we didn't. So now we have check-ins every Monday. During the pandemic, we actually did it 3 days a week, because for the most part, the majority of my team is women, and they work from home. and suddenly everybody was at home. And they really needed that extra support during that time because they weren't getting it from anyone. They weren't getting it from their friends because they weren't seeing them. They weren't getting it from anyone. They were supporting, whoever was home, husbands, wives, kids, like whoever was there. So we have increased our communication. We also have started to clarify expectations. Anytime something comes up, like that recording situation was very interesting. Like, okay, we have expectations. I would never want to make, even though it's okay, it's the law here. But again, I want to make sure that everybody's comfortable, and they know that these are the expectations. We also have created a sense of belonging to a community. So in the past, before COVID, before we kind of went on a different path, we would actually reach out to the team and ask everybody, what's your favorite charity? Tell us what it is, what's one that's near and dear to your heart, and we would participate in that charity. So we did Project Linus, which is making blankets for kids who are displaced. And it's something that they can get whether they are, taken out of their homes and put into the foster care system or something that's theirs that they can take with them. And so we bought kits, blanket kits, and we shipped them to everybody in the country. And then we have a core group here in New Jersey, and we actually got together physically and made the blankets. And then we told everybody to take pictures, and we asked them, like, how many do you want? How many kits do you want? You can do it with your kids. You can get your own group. And that is something that brings the community together, even if you're far apart, even if you're remote. It's doing something together that you all have a commonality. And it's important for us to give back to our community. I mean, I'm involved in so many charities, and everybody on my team is too.
So you had to be intentional about all these things.
Yes. Hope is not a strategy. That's my theme of the day. I've already said that twice today, and I'm going to say it like 2 more times when I do my other stuff. It really is. We have to be intentional, especially in this environment. When you have remote people, you can't hope that they're working, hope that they're happy, hope that they're doing something. It's like you really need to check in with them, have that communication. And I'm sorry, I'm just so passionate about this. It's like, I love my team. I mean, anybody that knows me, like my team they are some rock stars, and I am so proud of them and blessed that I get to work with them. And I want to make sure that they're happy and that we're a right fit.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other thing too. When you have a remote workforce, or even when you hire anybody, they should have your values. Mm-hmm. And they should, because don't you want them to exemplify what you do to the client? I mean, both of you, if you have a paralegal and she may not, if she doesn't exemplify your image, just, if she's chewing gum and saying, yeah, she'll be in later. It doesn't exemplify what Aisha might want to portray.
Which is a great segue to a point I wanted to bring up on this topic, which is just because you're also doing all of the positive stuff, don't forget about holding people accountable for their performance. Mm-hmm. And you can do that. Mm-hmm. I've gotten a lot of companies that reach out and say, I need to discipline this person. I just don't know how to do it remotely, right? It's what are my expectations of their performance? So it goes back to, Alisa, your point exactly, which is if you are not clear in your communication to your employee about what your expectations are, if your expectation is that you're going to be manning the phones from 8:30 to 5:30 or 8:30 to 4:30, then you need to be doing that. And the fact that calls are rolling to voicemail and then you say later, oh, well, I just thought that it was quiet and I took a shower. No, that's not okay, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to be, as a manager, you have to be taking that extra step to be crystal clear about what your expectations are, and then taking that extra step to document and explain where the employee fell short. And so, yes, you can issue performance improvement plans and you can terminate during COVID. I just think, as you should always be, document. You don't
and
just.
The thing I would add about leadership to that, Aisha, is you absolutely have to get the blocking and tackling of of discipline and termination right, or it's going to get you. But nothing sends a message about what matters to you as a leader like a good firing. And
Oh my God, you sound like a good lynching.
Entrepreneurs. No. Not going.
Jason, I love the way you said that.
Entrepreneurs are reluctant to do it because they think it's going to be a hassle. But there are steps that you follow that if you follow, it's really likely to be fine. And I'm not saying go do it willy-nilly, and certainly don't do it for an inappropriate purpose. But I'll tell you when I bring it up. When companies come to me and say, we're really trying to work on being a speak-up culture and getting rid of retaliation, and I feel like there's a problem among our middle managers that they're shutting people down, and this is a real initiative, which it should be. And given another half hour, I would get on my soapbox about how important a speak-up culture is again. But one of the things I will tell people is, I'm frankly not a huge fan of a lot of zero tolerance policies, because I think a lot of times, we come from a culture that also believes in second chances, and there are times when people don't understand things, and sometimes those policies can get you in a bind you didn't mean to be in. One zero tolerance policy I like is when you find out somebody retaliated. And if you find out a middle manager, someone below you, retaliated against a rank and file employee, and you lower the boom,
that sends a message.
That will not happen again.
Yeah.
You don't have to say why, you don't have to say what you did, and you can do it appropriately, and you should do it appropriately, and it will send a message that will just pay off again and again and again.
It is, because you're setting the tone that you're not going to tolerate that behavior. Exactly. I agree 100%. Aisha, to your point too about, leaders need to communicate their expectations and have that, what's okay and what's not okay. Mm-hmm. Employees need to also communicate. Maybe more so than they used to do, because I feel like, I'll see them at the office, I'll talk about it, but I think now you really need to, as an employee, you need to take some ownership of making that communication happen, and saying like, hey, I have to help my kid from 12 to 1 because they have such trouble being on Zoom for gym or some kooky thing that the kids doing now. You know what I mean? And that type of communication goes a long way with employers.
Yeah, just let me know.
Right. So Jason, do you think that, and we're talking about sort of handling remote workforces, do you think that small businesses and entrepreneurs have an advantage here? Were they able to pivot easier?
They have a huge advantage in this whole realm of building a team and turning it to a competitive advantage. And the advantage they have is the simple way to put it is you can look your team in the eye directly, right? If you're a 100 employee company or 100,000 employee company, you cannot get the CEO and the leader in the room with the employees, looking them square in the eye. But when you're a small business and you're an entrepreneur, number one, you can get in the room and you can deliver a message personally, and no form of training. I do training. I build e-learning courses for people. None of that is as effective as a person in a room or in a Zoom call looking you in the eye and saying, this is what I believe. Yeah. This is what we need to do.
Yep.
That's the most effective form of human communication. And in terms of bringing things like the mission of a company, the passion for the company to play, nobody can do that like an entrepreneur. That's one of the entrepreneur's strengths. And it's hugely powerful in building a team and keeping a team happy. And I've personally seen times and have been the happy beneficiary of times where, in my own companies where, employees were getting paid under market. There's no other way to put it. That was the economy, and that was the nature of our startup. And we weren't paying market salaries, and people stayed, and they loved to stay, and people wanted into the company. And why was that? Because we had a mission and we had a passion, and the people who came in believed in that mission and passion, and understood that, maybe they got a little more personal respect and freedom because we were a small business. And it really empowered the company. Now, the flip side is you're also at greater risk. You're at greater risk because people really depend on transparency coming with that passion and mission. You've got to be upfront with people and there's no hiding anything in a small business from your team. You need to
No.
be completely upfront with them about why you're doing things, and if you are upfront with them, they'll usually be right there with you.
Mhm.
I'm
And
going
then
to throw out,
the
I
other
would,
danger, just to say quickly, in a small business is all the barriers people feel about bringing bad news up the chain go double in a small business, because it is you, and because it is, you know, in most small businesses there is kind of a cult of personality because it's about the entrepreneur, right? And the lesson I give to people is, so we all, you know, in the whole Me Too movement, Charlie Rose, right? We all know Charlie Rose, and him being thrown off the air because of his sexual harassment hijinks. But the thing I remember about Charlie Rose is Charlie Rose Productions LLC was a small business. It was just a handful of people. And Charlie Rose had an office manager, the executive, who had the title executive producer, Yvette Vega, and the employees went to Yvette Vega. And they said, Charlie's, you know, walking out of the shower naked, and Charlie's doing all these things. And Yvette Vega said, and she said this, by the way, Yvette Vega said, oh, that's just Charlie being Charlie. And suddenly no bad news went uphill, and the company went down for it.
Yeah.
Because they didn't confront the issue. So, you know, she regrets it now. She says she let her employees down, but just, you know, let that be a lesson. It happens in small businesses even more.
Yeah. You have to have your employees back.
Yep.
Aisha, what were you going to say?
I have this question for you, and both of you can sort of jump in on this. This is actually an issue that a colleague of mine raised to me. He has a small business. He's a lawyer. He's got 3 separate offices. If there's anybody I could say works like a dog, it is this man. He works like a dog. He is always working, but once or twice a year, he
No,
says,
my dog's
okay,
curled up right over there. It doesn't look like he's working very hard.
but he's got to prioritize his family. And so he'll take his wife and 2 kids to Disney, or they'll go on a cruise at Christmas time, something like that. And he actually had his office manager say to him, well, how can you refuse my vacation request? You're always going on vacation. So because you're in this small environment, people sometimes forget what their spot is, what the role is, and what the function is. And the fact that he doesn't expect her to work, 70 hours a week that he works, but it's not even the same measure. So, Jason and Alisa, how would you answer that office manager?
Yeah, and I've heard this one. I've heard this from CEOs who's like, oh, I never expect one of my employees to do something I wouldn't do. And my feeling is, well, of course, you're going to do more than your employees. It's your company. It's your business. And not only do you depend on it more deeply, but you built it as an expression of yourself. It's everything you are when you're an entrepreneur. Of course, you're going to work harder than your employees. You cannot hold your employees to the same expectation you hold yourself to.
But how do you answer an employee who says, you don't get paid? How come you're doing that, refusing my vacation leave?
I think you're transparent and you explain it out. You could say,
Yeah.
let's break that down.
You have to
let's break that down for a minute. It's like,
you have to set the tone.
This is what I do. It's your tone. This is what I do with my life, and this is my one shot, and I reserved it. And we decided going in how much time off you would get, and when that time comes, go and don't call the office, right? And buy a Kios, right? But in the other times, I'm counting on you to be here. And if something comes up, and you need more time, and you come to me and you talk about it, and we'll see what's going on.
That's the difference between being the owner and an employee, because something goes wrong and you're on vacation, it doesn't matter where you are. But if you're an employee and you go on vacation, it is what it is. Yeah. So
this is why when I have employees, I have a rule, which is what I started doing was last 2 weeks of August, I'm on vacation, the company's closed.
Right. And
you're all taking vacation that week, and we're telling our customers we're gone, because otherwise and none of us are really getting vacation.
But you're setting the tone, and that's what makes the difference. So, for example, I've told my team and have been, setting the tone for this for a long time. This company needs to run independently of me. It needs to run without me doing day-to-day work. And my son's getting married in the middle of November. And thank you. And it's in Maryland. And so we are going to quarantine for 2 weeks ahead of time, the whole family. And we're going to go down, and everybody is trying to stay away from everyone so that we don't have any issues. And I told my team, I am not going to be working. I am going to be off. Now, mind you, if some crisis happens, of course I will. But as an employee, I don't expect any of my employees to do it. And I insist that my employees take vacation because I need them to not work. So, and I'm sorry, I have to check out. I love talking with both of you.
Why are you checking out? Give the plug.
Because I am heading over to my other, I have a webinar. It starts at 1:00 about outsourcing accounting and IT. And my one for tomorrow is New Jersey Business and Industry Association, NJBIA. If anybody goes to the website, it's called Creating Culture and Connections. And it's good seeing you guys. Take care.
Hi, Alisa.
So Ayesha, you and Alisa are also doing your thing tomorrow morning, right?
Yeah. So
What's your topic?
I actually don't know because I'm literally so busy right now. I'm going day by day. So this evening I will prepare, but I apologize. But
so tomorrow morning at 8:25, Ayesha and Alisa will talk about something interesting for women entrepreneurs, but I always tune in and it's always useful to me too.
It's a fun chat. So Jason, you do a fair amount of reading on sort of management strategies and team building. I think that's what makes you such a strong advocate for employers. What's your favorite thing you've read recently that we can all benefit from?
Well, the favorite here, I'm gonna post something in chat, and my favorite is actually not a recent read. It's something that I read. It's something I read in the 2000 aughts. And when I read business books and stuff, usually it's like, yeah, okay, right. It's your brand. I get it. Okay. And this is one where it's like the whole time through the book, I'm just nodding my head. It's like, nailed it. Absolutely. Great point.
Right.
And it is this book, It's Your Ship, by Captain D. Michael Abrashoff. Now, don't be put off by the subtitle, Management Techniques from the Best Damn Ship in the Navy. And you think, oh, God, it's going to be military. I certainly don't have a military shop. His secret to success in taking this very run-of-the-mill boat and making it like achieve all these great things was he took a very unmilitary approach. He took a very team-centered approach. And it's why I bring it up here. Because it's really about using his team as his strength and the things he did to do that, and ways he just totally broke the mold and basically told the military, I don't care how you do it. This is how I'm going to do it on my ship. Watch it work. Wow. And it worked. So that's
pretty great. And that's unusual for a military perspective. There isn't a whole lot of team. So.
Right. No, it's a very unusual. And this was the springboard, by the way, for him to be like now the best paid speaker in whatever speaker bureau he's on and have this hugely successful consulting firm. Bless his heart. It's a good book. And buy it from your local bookstore.
Right.
We are almost out of time. Let's I guess we better give a few more coming attractions. So next week, well, in 2 weeks, there's a lot going on in 2 weeks. There happens to be an election. Get your ballots in this week, as we were saying in our pregame. But a few other things. Our next session will be 2 weeks from today at noon, November 4th, on what the election means to small business. Wherever it is, whatever's going on, we will tell you what we're not looking for political punditry. We're going to try and engage in some business punditry and talk about what it means for the future of your small business, as best we can tell from the way the winds are blowing at that time. And in terms of the book, we're going to have a couple more sessions after that this year, and our December session will be a small business gift guide. So we'll have to start saving up ideas for that one. Also, November 4th through 6th, let me give a quick plug. Princeton University is doing its first ever Innovation and Entrepreneurship Conference. It is free to attend. It is completely virtual, and they are very much inviting the local entrepreneurship community to be a part of it. And I put the link for information to the Engage 2020 conference in the chat, I will be there. Anything else on your calendar?
You know what? I wish I could tell you, but as I said, I'm going to
Depositions.
at this point.
Work. So the final message is for all you employers out there, right? Listen to what we're saying about team building so that Ayesha can get a break.
That's right.
There won't be quite so many employees calling her up and saying,
Oh, no. I'm sending the opposite message. Go ahead and keep doing what you're doing, and
all right.
call Jason to cover you, and then I'll have more business. But
right, you can pay me now or pay her later.
Exactly.
Thanks everybody for joining us again. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Bye everybody.